Multiplying radicals is slightly more difficult than adding and subtracting because you have to remember what they all mean. So remember that when you have I to the first, it's equal to I squared is equal to negative 1. I to the third is negative I, and I to the fourth is 1. That's going to become helpful when we're multiplying because you're going to have to reduce things a little bit and simplify them. Okay, so the first one up here, we're going to multiply these together. So when I multiply the numbers, I get 32. When I multiply the i's, I get I squared. Well, I know that I squared is really negative 1. So I put that in place. So now I'm multiplying these two together, and I get negative 32. That's my final answer. Okay, moving across to number 2. Something like this, you're going to want to distribute the negative 7i. So this has to go to both parts of this. So when I multiply the numbers, I'm going to get negative 14i, and then distributing it to the second one, I'm going to get negative 42i squared. Okay, well, I to the first we know is just I, so that one's going to stay as is. So negative 14i. The second one, we know that 42 is really, or that I squared is really negative 1. Okay, so multiplying those together, I get negative 14i plus 42, because that becomes a positive. And remember, when we write our final answer, we want the real stuff to come first and the imaginary stuff to come second. So it's going to be 42 minus 14i as my final answer. Same thing on the third one. This has to go to both. It has to distribute to both of them. So I distribute that negative I, and I get negative 3i. The second one, I'm going to get negative I squared. Okay, well, we know that I is I, and I know that I squared is really negative 1, so the negative of negative 1. Well, this negative negative is going to turn plus plus, and I'm going to put my real stuff first, so 1, my imaginary stuff second, final answer. Third one, the fourth one over here, what I would do is multiply the first two together. Actually, no, I would go a different route than that. I'd multiply the imaginaries together first. So I'm going to leave that 5 for later. I'm going to multiply these two together, and I'm going to get negative 49, and then I squared. So I know that I squared is really negative 1, so it's really negative 49 times negative 1. So it's negative 5 times a positive 49. Okay, so then all I have to do is multiply negative 5 and 49, which is going to give me negative 245. So there's no imaginaries left in this. This is my final answer, just like that. Okay, next one. Again, what I would do is multiply these together first, because they're going to be a little nicer than having to distribute to that next one. So if I put these two together, I get negative 7i squared. Okay, well, I know that I squared is really negative 1. When I multiply those two together, I get a positive 7. Now I have positive 7 times 5 plus 4i. Because I haven't multiplied this yet, it has to come straight down. So now it's just distributive property, and it's simple. Distributing here, I get 35. Distributing to here, I get plus 28i. My real number is first, my imaginary is second, so that's my final answer. Well, what does it mean when I'm squaring something? That doesn't mean that I can distribute the squared. What it means is I'm writing it twice. I'm multiplying it times itself. Okay, so remember that when we're doing this, we can either choose to think of it as double distributive property, or we can think of it as FOIL. If you want to think of it as FOIL, here's my first. It's going to be 4. Then I'm going to go outer, which takes it all the way to the outside. So I've distributed that 2 to both of them now. So that will give me negative 4i. Inner is taking this to both. So that gives me a negative 4i. And then my last is multiplying those two together, and that's going to give me a positive 4i squared. Okay, so now I'm going to put the stuff that is alike together. So these are just i's, just plain I raised to the first. So that means there's negative 8 of them. So this is really 4 times negative 1, because that's what I squared is. So it's negative 4. So when I put those two together, these get 0. So my final answer is really negative 8i. Okay, last two. I still want to FOIL these together. So I'm going to go to FOIL method again. So my first one is going to be negative 8. Outer is going to take these to the outside to be 48i. Inner is going to take these in together and give me 6i. Last is going to take this to the outside and give me negative 36i squared. Okay, remember that I squared is negative 1, so it's really 36 times negative 1, which is a positive 36. I'm going to combine my i's together, and 48 plus 6 is 54. So I have 54 i's. Okay, so now I have numbers and I have imaginary, so my numbers come first. So negative 8 plus 36 is going to give me 28, and then plus 54i. Reals first, imaginary second. Okay, so then my last one. Multiply these two together first because they're both simple monomials by themselves. So that gives me positive 32i squared. And then I'm going to multiply this. But first I can simplify because I know that this is really 32 times negative 1, which is negative 32. So now it becomes a simple distributive property. So 32 times 2 is negative 64. Distributing 32 times 7 for the second part is going to be a positive 224i. And I have the real part first, the imaginary part second, the end.